Good evening and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm your host, Kim Todd, and we've got another great hour of answering your gardening questions. Insect pest questions are going to go to Wayne Onisor tonight.
Good evening, Kim.
We have Matt Soshik, all those turf and weed questions.
Thanks, Kim. Hello, everyone.
Lauren Giesler, rots and spots.
Always great to be here, Kim.
And Kelly Feehan, kind of her first appearance, maybe kind of sort of, from Columbus.
Yes, it's good to be here.
You know, you can get your questions answered by dialing 402-472-1212 if you live in Lincoln. Our toll-free number is 800-676-5446. Emails and pictures for future shows can be sent to byf@unl.edu. When you send us those questions, please tell us as much as you can about the problem. Tell us where you live. More information lets us answer those questions better. You can also follow Backyard Farmer during the week. FaceTube, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Pinterest, all those good social media things. Before we get to questions, let's look at samples. And Wayne, you are at the ready.
That's right.
What do you
Always
have?
been ready. I've got bee mimics tonight. More specifically, I've got bumblebee mimics. And down here, I'm going to start with what we call the flower flies or syrphid flies. You can see a number of them here vary in their degree to how good they look like a bumblebee. The first one here is probably the most convincing to a viewer, but my experience shows me that any of these can be mistaken for a bee. The next one's over here. These are robber flies from the genus Laphria. There's a bunch of very good bumblebee mimics. You notice the one has an orange spot on the rump, which would then be for a couple of very specific bumblebee species that it would mimic. Moving on down, we have a hummingbird clearwing moth that flies during the day and then also mimics a bee. And then we have a locust borer, a beetle here, next to that would mimic that with that black and yellow coloration. And then just to give you a true bumblebee, here's one right here that you can now see that this is a true bumblebee.
So all sorts of things attempting to pretend that they can sting us.
That's right. Yep.
All right.
Less food for birds that way.
All right.
Swatted them all.
Swat them all. All right. Thanks, Wayne. What is that exactly? It looks like a rug.
Yes, it is a giant rug plant that I just brought in that you can replace your carpet with. No, it is a common purslane plant, and I just thought I'd bring in a couple weeds. That one's common purslane, and then this one is goosegrass. And you can tell that they're both, I don't know, this one's kind of shriveled up, but so is the purslane. And this time of year, when we're starting to get drier weather, you start to see the weeds. The weeds are loving the dry weather and the grass isn't. So you get thin grass and then you get weeds coming in. And if you have plants like this or weeds that are this big already, they can be very difficult to control. And one of the things you might be thinking about is next year, all these are going to create a lot of seed. Purslane, goosegrass, foxtail. So thinking about next year, even if you control them now, they probably already put out seed or they're going to put out seed. Think about putting down pre-emergent at the correct time or the correct pre-emergent to keep these out for the next season. With purslane, isoxaben or Gallery is probably one of the products that works really great for keeping it out. And then with goosegrass, a second pre-emergent application made in June would really help with those later seeded species, especially like goosegrass and foxtail. So if you have them this big already and they're seeding out, they're going to be an issue and they're going to be tough to control now. So the best thing to do now is, kind of plan for next year, hoe them out, and maybe do some non-selective work on big plants like these to get them out.
All right. Excellent, Matt. All right, Lauren, we have rot in the spot that we're hearing a lot about this time of year.
Well, and it's just the time of year we're just starting to see powdery mildew show up in some of our shrubs, specifically lilacs and viburnums. So I have some leaves here that are just showing the early stages of this, and you can kind of see these little dusty appearing spots that are white on the leaves. These are just the early stages of powdery mildew, and that will eventually, if we have, especially when we get low light conditions or cloudy conditions, you see powdery mildew do more damage or build up more. The other time you see it is usually late in the year when we start going down to shorter light conditions. So that's why we'll see it now and then going into August through to September. With this, most of the time, powdery mildew is not a disease that in something like lilacs that's going to kill the shrub. it can just make it look unthrifty. So I really don't recommend any kind of treatment for this, but just to know what it is, and you can do some things that can deter it. With this one, actually, some sprinkler irrigation overhead will help reduce powdery mildew because it doesn't like that free moisture like a lot of our other fungal leaf spots like. And so that's probably the only thing if you wanted to do something. There are fungicides if you really wanted to control it, but again, not really something that's going to kill the plant.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, Kelly, leaf night.
Leaf night, yes, I have here. I actually have 3 leaves, okay? This is 1 leaf, this is 1 leaf, and this is 1 leaf. So what I want to share is we often talk about compound leaves or simple leaves when we're identifying things, so I just thought I'd quick explain the difference. So this appears to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves, but those are leaflets. So this entire thing is 1 leaf because the whole thing came out of 1 leaf bud. So that's how we determine that it's a compound leaf versus a simple leaf that only has the 1 blade and no leaflets. So this is a horse chestnut, and this one is a silver linden. You can kind of see the silver on the back. That's a nice linden we don't see much of. We'd like to see more of those planted. And then, of course, this one is a honey locust. And there's 2 kinds of compound leaves. This is a pinnate compound leaf because all these leaflets kind of grow along. What do you call that again? Rachis?
Rachis.
Rachis, thank
Yep.
you. I don't teach on a regular basis. And then this horse chestnut is palmate compound because all the leaflets connect at the exact same point. So that's the difference between a compound leaf and a simple leaf.
Excellent, and that's really important for viewers who think they have an ash in their landscape to know.
Right,
If
or
it's not a-
poison ivy.
Yeah, if they're not compound leaves, they're not ash or poison ivy. All right, thanks, Kelly. Wayne, you get the first picture question. This is 3 miles west of Fort Calhoun, and I'm sure our viewers can see what is clearly not plant life on that particular branch. This is a weeping purple beech, and this is just taken in the last week or so. They want to know what those insects are and will they cause any severe damage and how to control them, or should they control them?
Well, despite the coloration that you see on these caterpillars, they are commonly known as yellowneck caterpillars. There's a number of different species. They all belong to the genus Datana, and we think this one is Ministra due to the coloration and the fact that it's on beech. It has a very wide host range, and if you're really concerned about them and you can get them in this nice clump like this, you can just tap them off into a bucket of soapy water, or if you're not so inclined to go that route, you can spot spray with something with permethrin in it.
What do they turn into? Is it pretty or is it just not?
It depends. It's all in the eye of the beholder, Kim.
Yeah. Walked right into that one, didn't I?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks, Wayne. Nutsedge, Matt, we have 2 viewers with questions. This particular person says they've had it for years. It's taking over. And this one is actually in North Platte. I think he did not know, the North Platte viewer, what this was because he used a weed and crabgrass killer twice and nothing has taken care of it. So what do we tell viewers who have all sorts of nutsedge issues?
Okay, yeah, for the nutsedge, the weed and crabgrass preventer doesn't have the right product or active ingredient in it to control nutsedge. Some of the actives that work on it are sulfentrazone or halosulfuron. And there's a couple products that are sold. I think Ortho and Bayer both sell some called Sedge Killer, and that has either of those 2 products in it. And generally, we want to hit it a lot sooner than now because they're already making tubers underground. So next year, you might have 1 plant in the middle this year, and then next year it's going to take up 3 feet. So as soon as you can see them, generally around that June 1st is probably the best time to treat them with a product containing either halosulfuron or sulfentrazone, and that usually does well. And sometimes you need a repeat application.
So the pre-emerge that you talked about earlier for the other weeds will not do it?
No. Generally, most of the pre-emergents we use for crabgrass don't control nutsedge.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Matt. Lauren, this is a viewer with a big red oak. Top is clearly toasty, and then she thinks it started midway up the tree. It's progressed from there. She also has images of the foliage. Any thoughts on this?
Well, there's a couple things, and trees, large trees like this with a picture sometimes are really difficult, but where the damage is on top, it didn't really look to me like it was confined to a certain branch of the tree like we may see, you know, with some of our cankers or wilt diseases and things. So I really question, depending on where this is at, if it wasn't something that was, you know, a drift from a field or something that burnt the top of that tree because it's just showing up there. One thing the deer could do is look at this from the standpoint of if they can tell in the tree if there's a certain large branch that is affected, and then there's other branches that blend into that from other portions of the crown that are green, this wouldn't be the case. But if it is brown on the top and it's across different large portions of the crown of the tree or different large branches, it really suggests some sort of physical injury to me, the way it looks. So, and again, the other thing they could, you know, look into a little more and maybe even send a sample into a diagnostic lab.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Kelly, this is a North Omaha viewer, a Judd viburnum, one of the beautiful early bloomers. This one's 10 years old, had normal leaves, normal flowers. Now they're seeing very small foliage, lower branches, and then the base is looking like this. And so she's wondering if she's losing the plant. Does she need to do some pruning? What are we going to suggest here?
Okay. Well, it's from a photo, sometimes it's difficult to tell for sure. I don't see any sign of browning on the leaves or anything like that. Although in the one photo, the close-up photo, the branches are very dense. So that might indicate that maybe some pruning would be needed, that it's becoming overgrown. And once they become overgrown, those branches, they can even girdle each other if they grow against each other. There is some shade. There's a spruce tree nearby, and that might be providing some shade and some competition. So at this point, I think I'd do some thinning out. We always tell people to go in there and remove 1/3 of the largest diameter branches one year, and then 1/3 the next year, and 1/3 the next year. And once you try to do that when they're so tightly intermingled together, it's really tough. So the other option is to do a rejuvenation pruning, which would be when it's dormant, take it back close to the ground.
All right.
So that's what I would try.
Hopefully that'll work for her. That's a good viburnum. All right, thanks, Kelly. Well, for our first feature tonight, we're going to hear about a neat program where Nebraska Extension is partnering with the Grand Island YMCA to teach kids about gardening. The program focuses on helping kids know where their food comes from, how to grow it, and even how to prepare it.
So out here at Raising Nebraska, we're doing a little community garden with actually both the YMCA and the YWCA with Nebraska Extension and them. So we've been out here all summer. We planted early this summer. The 4 raised beds you can see behind us here actually are what we're taking care of. We come out YWCA on Wednesdays and YMCA on Thursdays to take care of the beds. So we're just out here trying to teach them some gardening skills and widen some of their choice in vegetables and kind of teach them these skills that they can take back home to their parents. So what we're teaching the kids is basically we started with planting, then we worked all the way up. We're working through what part of the plants we eat, the nutrition quality of the plants, how they can do it at home, things like that, teaching them how to properly take care of the plants and whatnot. So usually when something's starting to ripen up, we'll spend half the class out in the garden doing a little lesson, then the second half of the class will go inside to Raising Nebraska there, and we'll prepare it, whatever is the most convenient way to prepare any particular item. Let the kids try it. I think it's an important program just because it is going to teach these kids skills that, a lot of times they might not have experience in gardening. They might not have ever really grown their own tomato or grown anything of their own. So it gives them these skills that they're going to be able to take home, maybe start a garden with their parents, or even just later on down their life, teaching them the importance of growing their own food and how healthy some of their diets can be with supplemented with a gardening, things like that. And then just a lot of times, they might have heard of these things and always thought they might not like them. So giving them the opportunity to grow it, they're a little more apt to try it, I've found. And then so they find out they might like a lot more vegetables than they thought they might have beforehand. Eventually, once we have an excess of produce, we'd like to donate it to local agencies to kind of help with some of the healthy food access in the area, specifically, to places like Salvation Armies or homeless shelters in the area. I would like to, and to take that and have the kids be a part of that, I think it'd be a great service opportunity as well.
Yep, there's more over here, but we're going to try this one.
It's really great to see the next generation of farmers learning about growing things and having a lot of fun with those water bottles. And that feature was taped at Raising Nebraska in Grand Island, where there are lots more interesting and fun activities for kids to begin to understand where their food comes from. So do be sure to stop by for an afternoon when you're at the State Fair, especially the afternoon when we're there, and we'll answer your questions too. All right, Wayne, second picture is for you. This is a Northeast Lincoln viewer, a wasp colony in the yews in the front yard. How do they get rid of them? Can they cut the branch down and just sort of trot it away? Will the hive get bigger? What are we going to do here?
Well, this is one of our paper wasp species. Unfortunately, this is an invasive one. This is a European paper wasp. It's been moving slowly from the east to the west. I recently had someone out in the Panhandle send me pictures of one of these this week where they had it in their flowers. So there was just one wasp visiting. In this case, I would not recommend just cutting down the branch and walking off with it. It's a good way to get yourself stung. My recommendation would be find one of those hornet and wasp killer spray cans. Some of those advertise anywhere between 15 and 30 feet that they'll be able to shoot. Go out at night, put a piece of red cellophane over your flashlight and hose it down.
What's the red cellophane for?
They're colorblind. They might chase you if you can see the light. So that's what the red cellophane.
What a good idea.
Is there any risk of burning a yew with that material? Are those plant safe? Some of those sprays?
That's
I don't know.
a
the
good
answer to that.
question, Lauren. I
mean, 'cause
cannot
the yews
answer
are
that.
kind of sensitive, so it might
They are.
they might have a little damage, and
So
I don't know.
Don't soak the whole plant.
Or maybe water it off after you kill the bees. It might be
Yeah,
safe,
good-
you know, after you kill the wasp.
Good thought.
Yeah,
there.
the killer would be really fast acting, so you could go out the next morning and hose
Close
it
it off.
down.
It might, because some of them are pretty oily. They might burn.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
Especially
a
with higher
good
temperature.
look at there, the pathologist bringing up something.
job.
we
Just
can-
trying to help.
It's like mosquito repellent on turf. It'll kill it.
It'll kill it. There you go. All right. Speaking of turf, Matt, this is in the central Nebraska, Johnson Lake, Elgin area. And this viewer wants to know what this grass-like weed is, and they say these little seeds stick in their socks, stick in their pet fur. What is it, and how can they get rid of it both now and in the future?
Okay, so this one, it looks to be yellow foxtail. And what's sticking in your shoes and getting on your pets is the seeds. So that means that the seeds are already matured and they're falling off when you walk by or move them around. The seeds tend to fall off of the plant. So for next year, there's going to be a lot of seeds in this area. Right now, there's a couple products that work. Something with quinclorac in it will help kill the plant, but when they're this mature, they can be very difficult to control. So looking for next year, like I was talking about with the purslane and some of the other grassy weeds, a second application for foxtail with the pre-emergent, some of the general ones, prodiamine, pendimethalin, dithiopyr. If you apply those early in May or April, by the time that foxtail is germinating later in June or even later than that in July, that pre-emergent is pretty much worn off. So a second application in June will help prevent those in the following year.
All right, thank you, Matt. Okay, Lauren, you have a couple of grape questions from two different viewers. One is in Lincoln, and the grapes look terrible, and the stems also have these black sunken sorts of things. And the other viewer, we're not sure where this one is. That's the black sunken stuff. But he also he says they're rotting on the vine. So what are we thinking this is, and what is the potential
Well,
cure?
note the spots on the stems here on this one. The previous one, some of the fruits had kind of sunken areas with dark lesions that even had some rings to them in that one. And I believe these are all black rot on grape, which is a very common fungal disease on grape that can be worsened by anything that favors more moisture in the canopy. So you want to make sure that you're doing good pruning in the off season to make sure that that canopy is opened up. If you can do anything in the landscape to increase air circulation, that's going to help. Make sure you're using good sanitation methods to reduce all the inoculum. Black rot produces a lot of fruit mummies, so if it affects the fruit, they'll shrivel up like small raisins, and those will be inoculum for future years. So make sure you're using good sanitation. And then the final thing would be if you were really wanting to fully control it, if you've done all these things and still seeing it, you may have to get into a fruit spray program for your grapes to really manage it if you have a lot of black rot.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Kelly, this is from Clarkson. And 75 to 80% of the onions did this year. They planted sets, white, purple, yellow. Each one produced 2 onions. And then the stem itself is really hard and hollow in the center.
Yeah. Well, this is quite odd. I mean, usually when an onion does something like this, there's some kind of stress, and frequently an environmental stress. It's a little bit odd that it's such a large percentage, and it's affecting so many different types of sets. So that makes me think, again, it's something that uniformly affected all of those sets. So usually we'll see splitting of onions or onions forming double onions if the temperature, if the set itself is exposed to too cold temperatures. That's probably, or very dry soils. Those are probably the 2 most common reasons that onions split or develop those double onions. Again, I think it's odd that it's so many. And the thick stem is, I'm not sure what would cause that really thick, hard, and a single stem. I mean, it appears that all of the leaves are just a single leaf, green leaf, the photosynthetic leaf, and that's a little odd too. So Kim, I don't think it's obviously a disease or an insect, but maybe the sets were, maybe the sets themselves were subjected to cold temperatures before the person ever bought them, since it was done very uniformly. But it is a little bit odd, and I get one suggestion is always start with small sets. 1 inch or smaller. A lot of times people think the larger set they plant, the bigger the bulb will be, but usually the smaller the set you start with, the bigger the bulb later. I know that's not helping this person right now, but it's a little bit of a mystery.
Cool. We always like mysteries on the show.
Would it be cool enough if they put them in the fridge?
They
the spring,
could
if they
still
coulda
be
got 'em,
edible.
would that
Oh, I see
To
what
start
you
the
mean.
set, if they would have put them in the fridge, would that be too cool or not?
Well, yes,
Would it?
yes.
Okay.
All right, so who knows? Well, as the summer rolls on, our garden is bursting with color, fresh fruits, vegetables, and herbs. Let's take a minute to hear from Extension Horticulture Assistant Terry James at the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're going to remember it's the International Year of the Pulse. And we were lucky enough to get some of those pulses delivered to us from Scotts Bluff. We actually have some dry beans planted in our garden, and they're actually looking really well. They're a little bit of a runner bean, so they're kind of like falling on top of each other, but in the field they don't stake them up, so we didn't stake them up either. We have a pinto bean, we have a light kidney bean, and then we also have a Great Northern bean, and they all are looking really great. The beans are right next to our tomatoes and they look really great. They're intertwining amongst our tomatoes, and it's a very attractive combination. We also have some sugar beets. Not sure how they're actually going to work out. We got them planted a little late this year, but you can see the tops, pretty cool looking on the edge of our garden. And come October, we'll see if we'll get a big sugar beet in the ground. So that's what's happening in our Backyard Farmer Garden.
Thanks as always to Terry and all of the hard work the Master Gardeners have been doing this year, and our garden really does look nice. And Lauren, I'm really glad you couldn't find anything rotty or spotty.
I really tried to get a sample for tonight, and it was very hard out there. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect.
really disappointed.
All right, you get a question, Wayne. And this, let's do this one. This is, a viewer was told that the eastern click beetle will eat emerald ash borer larvae. Is this true?
Well, the larvae of the eastern-eyed click beetle will eat wood-boring insect larvae. Usually, it's in a already rotting or dead occurrence in a tree. So yes, it might have the potential to eat emerald ash borer larvae, but it would not be the primary food source, nor would it necessarily keep emerald ash borer under control.
All right. In other words,
unfortunately, it's not the silver bullet for emerald ash borer.
It's not the beneficial that eats the pest.
Not in this case.
Gotcha. All right.
The tree to
Thanks.
die, then let it come in.
That might help, but
Yeah, yeah.
by then you're
No,
a little
no.
late.
No, we're not doing that. Okay, Matt. This is an Omaha viewer that has a 4-step fertilizer program. 3rd step says June, July, or August. So should they do that now or wait for cooler weather, especially given what is predicted next week?
It depends on what they're putting down. Generally, they're probably putting down like a half a pound of nitrogen, slow release is my guess. So if you did put it down now, it would be fine. If you're irrigated, especially if the lawn is dry and then you go fertilize, might not be the best thing for it. But if you have a lush lawn already or a chance to irrigate or water it, it wouldn't hurt to put it down now. Just don't go on a really high rate with a quick release nitrogen source such as urea.
All right, thank you, Matt. Lauren, we're seeing the results of things that happened in the spring. This is a viewer that had a ornamental pear, and now he's describing this as acne on the leaves. And all the leaves have brown spots. He wonders, is it dying? What are we seeing on our pears?
Well, with pears, there's a few things. I'm trying to think if most common with that, if it's acne-like, we see scab on pears and flowering crab apples. There's also actually some bacterial diseases we'll see on our pears. So in either case, something that you're not going to manage right now, it's too late, but I would make sure we get it identified correctly so next year that you could manage it effectively early in the season. So we want to look at tree foliar disease management if we're going to do something more around bud break and when those leaves are just starting to come out.
All right, and if anybody wants to know what ornamental pears look like that have whatever it is we're talking about, just drive around Lincoln. They're pretty much all orange. Kelly, this is a, let's see, I don't know where this viewer's from, but she has a tropical hibiscus on her deck. Lots of flowers or buds, but she's saying that the buds begin to open and then they just fall. She doesn't see any insects. The plant itself looks healthy. Squirrels aren't getting them. Any thoughts on what could be causing the bud drop?
I always hate to revert back to environmental, but I'm going to say environmental again. And I don't know what the exposure of the deck is, but if it's very, very hot, especially last week's hot temperatures, that could be causing those buds just to drop off before they open up. So maybe move it to a place where we'll get some partial shade or something and see if that helps.
All right, Kelly, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm a little rusty, but I'm ready. My first time this year.
No rest is Lauren. You don't have to.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, two different viewers sent in two different questions about single brown branches on their little Mugo pines. Disease or prune them out?
I would prune them out. I'm not aware of a disease that will get into those, but snip them out.
All right. Has there been a formula change in preen for garden use that causes it not to be quite as effective?
Not that I have heard of, so most likely there's some other factor at play here.
All right. Any thoughts about a tree for the Bennington area to replace a linden? They don't really want acorns. They don't really want a lot of seed drop.
There's lots of good trees. I think I'd go to the Nebraska Statewide Arboretum website, and under publications, you'll see a list of trees for eastern Nebraska. There's a wonderful list there.
All right. If a particular plant has green veins and the color has gone out of the tissue and the leaves are beginning to curl and cup, are we thinking herbicide damage most likely?
It could be herbicide damage. It could be iron chlorosis, but they usually don't curl and cup unless it's really severe.
All right. Nice job. Thank you, Kelly. Lauren, ready?
Yes.
No lunch meat? We're disappointed. Okay.
Spam. Brady likes spam. Here we go.
We have, it's peach season, but these people are saying their peaches are molding on the counter. What's going on?
Watch out for brown rot. All of our stone fruits get that, and use a hot water dip to manage that. I believe
right.
it's 140 degrees for 1 minute.
Oh boy, all right. The bad spots in tomatoes, can you just take those out and then still eat it, or is whatever the rot is, it's not, okay, good. We're seeing spots and on the leaves of cottonwoods and aspens.
Most likely a foliar fungal disease that's septoria on those. You're not really going to do much to control it though, so I wouldn't recommend any treatment on those unless they're a young tree that you're trying to establish, and then you can use many different fungicides. You're good on septoria.
All right. We have the sun patience collapsing in landscapes, and that's not one that gets the downy mildew. Any idea on what would cause the sun patience to collapse?
Extreme drought. Next.
All right, good. Cotoneaster is suddenly dead, several branches, and there comes the lightning. You can answer it anyway.
Most likely some sort of a canker is what I'm going to guess on that. So look for some sort of physical injury on the branch and then go down, and I would prune that out and make sure you get 3 to 5 inches or so below that.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, you ready, Matt?
Yeah, we're gonna get 6 just to beat you.
Good luck.
Okay, so all of our
Really hard.
a lot of our landscape plants are 2 to 3 weeks early. So do we move the seeding window up for fall seeding of lawns, or do we let it be?
I would let it be. Typically, the earliest recommendation is probably around that August 15th. So go from there, and anytime up until September 15th.
All right. How do you control that broadleaf plantain-looking thing in turf?
You just look at it right now, and you wait till the fall, and then using a product, combination product, 2,4-D, Tricolpure, 3-way products work really great when using them in the fall.
Okay. How about controlling wild violets? What is the product we recommend?
Same thing. Use Tricolpure. Works a little better than 2,4-D base.
All right. We have a viewer that thinks oil or gas got spilled in one spot in their turf. Do they have to dig the soil up to get turf to grow there?
Most likely, depending on how much was spilled, you might have to dig that out because it'll persist in the soil for quite a few years, and you might have a dead spot there, depending on how it leaches through or gets out of there.
Okay. Are we in the window for treating our turf for grubs or out of it?
It's probably a little bit late now. Generally, you want to get it out a little bit earlier. Probably wait till June, July would be the latest. You want to get it down July 1st.
Okay. You
That
ready?
seemed to run quite long. I don't know if we should count that.
Yeah. And by the way, that's preventative.
Yeah, preventative. yes.
Curative.
Curative.
We're in the window.
Oh, thanks for the help on that one.
No problem.
Was it curative?
All right. Are
She
you
didn't
ready? Wade?
specify.
No.
I
good
didn't
thinking.
specify. Nope.
I was just thinking
Nope. Generalities.
preventative.
Okay. You ready, Wayne?
Yeah.
We people are
Curative
saying
too
they're
late.
now seeing dead cicada killers, and they haven't killed the cicada killers. What's up
Doesn't
with
mean
that?
their neighbors haven't been trying. I'm
Okay.
getting a lot of calls,
All right. So that's what's going on.
most likely.
Okay. Since we could still treat for grubs, is it okay to use carbaryl, or is there a better product?
There are better products than carbaryl. Carbaryl is one of the not as good products for a curative.
Yeah. So
we have a
what-
good neb guide on that. I can't remember the exact product names.
All right, excellent. Neb guide. Is there something you can treat for blister beetles that are eating things?
Carbaryl works well, or crushed up seashells.
All righty then, we'll go right out and get some of those. Is it time to treat for Zimmerman pine moth?
I have no idea.
Pass. Will milkweed bugs harm monarch caterpillars? Are they predaceous
No,
on them?
They are not predaceous if they're the milkweed bugs. They're more interested in sucking the sap out of the plants and out of the seeds.
All right. Ants are eating the rotten stuff in a tree hole. Are they supposed to be doing that, or should they treat?
Most likely it's carpenter ants, and they're not necessarily eating it. They are nesting in it.
Okay, excellent. Nice job, all. And I don't know who won, and I don't care.
I think we have a 3-way tie.
I was going to say, I lost. They tied. I told you I was rusty.
All right, Kelly, it's Plant of the Week time from
okay.
Gladys. So what has she brought us that is
Okay.
the bounty of her beauty?
Some more beauty. She's brought us actually a globe artichoke.
Oh,
Sonera. This is, most people grow it as a vegetable, but leave it to Gladys to grow it as a beautiful flower. That's the purple one here. And they always look like they have a thistle-like leaf, but it's not a thistle. It can get about 5 feet tall. So that's a very pretty one. And the others there's 3 different colors, but they're all an annual called Vinca. Sometimes called periwinkle. This is actually probably one of my favorite annuals as well. They just stay beautiful year-round. You don't have to do it, not year-round, but all season. You don't have to do anything to them. You don't have to deadhead them. The foliage has that nice, you can see that green glossy foliage. So very easy to grow perennial or annual. Just don't overwater the Vinca. And Gladys put down here that all parts of Vinca can cause stomach upset. I didn't know that.
excellent.
So don't eat it.
In your edible landscape, that is not one.
No.
Yeah, very
So
beautiful
thank you,
as
Gladys.
always. Yeah, I think one year she actually grew the artichokes and she let one become one and brought it in. And you can see the little bitty choke on there.
Right.
That's really fun. Thanks as
Pretty
always
perennial.
to Gladys for sharing her garden with us. All right, Wayne, you have a couple of pictures, and they're both different creepy crawlies. One is all over red twig dogwood, and this is from Blair. They want to know what these are.
These are most likely dogwood sawfly larvae.
Okay.
So these are actually a type of wasp, stingless, and the larvae are feeding. They look like a caterpillar, and they're feeding on those leaves. If you're really causing a problem, tap them off if there are not a lot of them that you can get to, or in this case, a carbaryl product would work because they're feeding on the foliage.
All right, and I believe we have a second picture. Yep, and this is also outside of Blair. They want to know what this one is.
Well, this is a good one for Tom Weisling. Too bad he's not on tonight, but this is a milkweed tussock moth. It's odd that they only have one. Usually they feed gregariously, especially when they're younger, and they can really wipe out an entire milkweed plant as far as the leaves. They're not really in competition with monarch butterflies. They tend to like the newer leaves, the monarchs do, and these will eat even the older yellowing leaves. So they're not necessarily something that we need to really worry about. But again, they're also nice to have in the landscape.
All right, tussocks. I like the word tussock. Okay, Matt, you have two different pictures, and the question really is, this viewer saw this little thing along their sidewalk edges. They're across from kind of a public trail. They want to know what this is and how to control it, and then they saw this other one in sort of the same spot, which is monstrous. They want to know what this one is, and they want to know whether they can control this or will that spread into their managed turf.
The seed will spread. One of them is the large ragweed, and the other one is more of the, I think, the common ragweed, which is a smaller. It can tolerate mowing a little better. This one, the giant ragweed, I think if you were to actually cut that down, it would probably kill the plant. It wouldn't regrow out of it once it's that big. So cutting it down, preventing it from going to seed will help. But it will probably get into your lawn, especially or next to the sidewalk there where there's probably not much grass for competition. So weeds are the first ones that are going to take advantage of that. Using a pre-emergent for broadleaves such as isoxaben in that area will help prevent those broadleaves from coming up. So that might be your best bet, and try and get grass to grow in there with better fertilizer applications, watering, just to get it to grow next to those sidewalks, which is tough.
All right, excellent. For those of you who are fretting over your allergies, giant ragweed is the culprit.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay, Lauren, you got to answer this question 3 weeks ago, but we didn't have a picture. And this is a viewer who wants to know if there are diseases that bother lily of the valley.
Well, I'm so glad I could be on again and get this picture, because at the time I didn't really know a lot about diseases of lily of the valley because I hadn't seen many. There are many foliar diseases that can affect it. So you hear us talk about septoria affecting other species, and septoria is common on lily of the valley. There's some other cercospores, other fungal infections as well. Based on the picture, I don't think it's rust. There is a rust at lily of the valley, but I think it's more one of those other fungal diseases. It's more residue-borne, so it exists on the leaves. Would probably always be there. Main recommendation on that is to avoid any type of overhead irrigation. Fungicides can be used to suppress it, but in general, I think if you avoid overhead irrigation, try to do some things if it's in the landscape where there's some air movement, you're going to see a lot less of that on it.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Lauren. Kelly, we have a viewer that sent a couple pictures of a rhododendron, and they're wondering if it's okay. And it's kind of the older, darker foliage, and then it looks like some new ones. It was planted this spring, and it was a transplant from a neighboring property. So any ideas?
Well, the foliage is a very pretty red, and this is kind of the normal fall color for rhododendrons. And so usually when they do it this early in the season, again, it's just a sign that something has stressed it, or environmental growing conditions are a little bit different. Otherwise, the foliage looks pretty healthy. So it appears to be growing in a very full sun location, and typically in Nebraska, the rhododendrons and azaleas both like a little bit of partial shade. It may just be a response to the stress of transplanting, but it's looking pretty good, so give it its good general care. if it is in full sun, you might have some trouble, especially in the winter with winter burn. But I don't know if I'd try to move it now. So hopefully it'll get some shade
All right.
and be fine next year.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. Well, good gardeners know that in order to deal with an insect problem, you have to catch them on the fly. It's always a great idea to take a few minutes when you're doing your chores to do some scouting around your plants to see what is munching on them. So here's our own Jim Kalish to show us what he found on his latest hunt around the garden.
I do so much enjoy community gardens because there's just so much diversity there. They're so intensively planted, and everyone has a plot, and a lot of different kinds of crops are grown throughout the season. And this is also true of urban settings when you have gardens that are side to side in backyards and the kind of thing. So what I want to talk about a little bit is about community gardens, gardening in the urban settings, and responsibilities that we have as part of this gardening community. First of all, in most gardens, we are very limited on the kinds of pesticides that can be used. You have carbaryl, you have pyrethrins, permethrins, soaps, insecticidal soaps, and horticultural spray oils. And just remember that with each of those products, there's a pre-harvest interval. And that means that at the point where you treat, you have to wait so many days before you can actually harvest the crop. So if you're in a setting where there's gardening going on all around you, remember that what you apply should be applied directly only on your crop. You should know the pre-harvest interval, you should read your label, but also be wary of the possibility of the insecticide that you apply spreading into your neighbor's garden. So we don't really want that. One of the major problems that we find in midsummer gardens is spider mites, two-spotted spider mites, and they can be on various kinds of crops, especially beans and tomatoes, and they'll move on to other crops. It's important to treat them early when you're first looking at the signs of their damage, which is white stippling on the leaves. They can be treated with insecticidal soaps or horticultural spray oils. They could be treated on a cool morning or in the evening when the wind is down. Apply with thorough coverage. One of the most pervasive problems that we have in midsummer in summer squashes is squash bug. They're just disgusting, and they can multiply so rapidly. If you take a look at the bases of the plants or under the leaves, you can see their golden eggs deposited by the adults, and then by this time we'll be seeing the nymphs as well, crawling about and scurrying about as they're exposed in the sunlight. But here's a case where they're in this garden setting. This garden has not been kept up very well, and as long as this condition remains where there's squash bugs, lots of weeds, this very potentially can spread to other plots in the garden or your neighbor's squashes. In mid to late summer, grasshoppers become an increasing, almost overwhelming problem in gardens. So if you live out in the country where you have lots of tall grasses in the vicinity of the garden, it's important to be treating the grasshoppers while they are still there. In this garden setting, we have some really close mowing around the entire plot area, which creates a bit of a barrier for grasshoppers and keeps them away, so therefore they're not migrating away into the garden area. So treat the grasshoppers while they're in waste areas well outside of the garden while they're still young, and they won't be a problem later in the summer. Now finally, of course, we want to talk about pollinators. As a gardener, it's really important to be promoting insect pollinators in your garden because it serves you well to have produce that are pollinated and producing. So whatever pesticide you use, make sure that it's applied in the early morning hours or with a consciousness about impact on wild bees, honeybees, and all those other insects that pollinate your valuable crops.
Jim, always good to know what's out there causing damage or just something to enjoy, right? No,
Right.
no pageantry, that's Fred's line. You have to come up with your own.
Good scene.
Oh, I'll
Okay.
be back next month.
All righty. You have two pictures in this next one, Wayne, and the first is obviously a hole in a tomato, and he wants to know what could have caused it. And the second one, yeah, they're the other side, and then we have another one that is kind of an odd beastie, a little crusty place on a tomato, just starting to turn, the crust knocked off, and there was a bug inside of it, about an inch long. The whole inside of the tomato was turning into water. Any ideas
Well, the
on that
last
one?
one sounds exactly like tomato fruitworm, or also we also know it as corn earworm. They'll get
Okay.
into there as well. This
Yeah.
first one, though, I look at that and it's right on the line of the fruit, and I almost wonder if that's not split from overwatering. I don't know if Kelly has seen quite something like that, or if it would be a combination of both getting into it.
Yeah, usually, I mean, it could be splitting from overwatering does occur, or if the plant is dry and then all of a sudden it rains heavily or we water heavily, the plant just takes up more water and you get cracks forming in the tomato. And I thought it looked more like an insect hole.
It could be, but the interesting thing is usually tomato fruitworm will pupate down in the soil, not in a crusty piece on the fruit itself. And so that's what kind of throws me on this is, okay, which one is it? The damage is about right, but
And either way, I'm not eating that.
Just cut it out.
Just cut it out.
Get it off.
give it to Lauren.
I'll eat it.
There you go.
Just don't look at it.
All right, Matt, we have a viewer that has something not so great in their fescue. There's the picture of it, and they want to know what it is, why it happened, and what to do about it.
Great picture. You can actually see what's going on in that one. And that is rust, and it's on tall fescue. So right now the grass is slowed down. It's really not growing aggressively. So we have a lot of, basically when we have temperatures like this, cooling, wet, hot, there's opportunity for the rust to form on those leaves since they're not growing out of it, and the rust kind of persists. One thing, fall's just around the corner. That rust will probably disappear as the grass starts growing when the temperature's cool. The best thing to do is just practice good fertility, good watering, and just promote a healthy turf. And it's really not going to affect the grass unless, I don't know, what do you think, Lauren? I mean, it's
Well, that's the thing. It's a good indicator of low fertility
Yep,
usually.
yep.
So, yeah,
Right.
good fertility program will help a lot.
Yep.
Excellent. We won't tell people that that is perhaps in a location pretty close to the backyard farmer garden.
yeah, a little bit more nitrogen.
All right, Lauren, tomato night for you as well. This is a viewer has tomatoes dying from the tops down. Top leaves turn yellow first, and then the stems. They're wondering, is it bacterial? And then the second one is this one that has these little black specks on it. So two different viewers, two different tomato issues.
Well, I don't know if anyone saw the pattern here tonight, but if I was an entomologist, I could say, well, that's tomato yellow leaf insect or something, 'cause it's the name of the host usually, so I always get a kick out of that. But anyway, on this one, I think the spots are some sort of it could be a bacterial spot, and anthracnose will also do that. So I don't know if they're seeing any spots on any of the other leaves, which could indicate either of those. They should see some sort of activity on those typically. And so that it's going to be something that you avoid overhead irrigation, try to do things to open up the canopy. If you see any injury on the leaves that look like leaf spots, I would remove those just to reduce inoculum. Make sure you're mulching. I couldn't see in the picture if they had mulch at the base or not. Just something to keep any soil splash where residue of all those diseases are going to be. The yellow one is a little different. That to me looked kind of like a fertility issue, and possibly Kelly, I don't know if we want to talk about something related to that, but I think that it looked more nutritional, unless it was just one plant out of 10 that had it, and then we could be dealing with a virus and need to rogue it out.
You said tomato plants, so my guess
Okay,
is
they're
it's-
all, and so if it's
yeah,
multiple
fertility.
ones, probably fertility.
It could be fertility, yes.
Yep. All right, Kelly, you get the last picture of the night. This is near Scribner, a pear, 40 years old, damaged by a big storm. They want to know whether they can save the tree, anything they can do to seal or spray the break, or give it a decent burial.
Decent burial. When you have that large of a wound on the trunk, trees will not heal, and on a smaller branch or a smaller wound, it can slowly seal it by growing that cambium layer over it, but it will not do that on a trunk like that. And that's a very extensive wound. So while the tree maybe can live for a while, it's eventually you're going to get decay into that, and it's just going to continue to decline. And you can't put anything on it. You can't put a Band-Aid on it. People want to wrap it sometimes. They want to paint it. They want to put pruning wound dressing on it. But in reality, that would be the worst thing that you can do if you want to try to save it. So they can, live with it for a while if they want to, but I think the sooner you remove it and replace it with another tree, the better.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Well, we have some announcements of fun things in the gardening world for our viewers tonight. The first is the Lincoln Ira Society Rhizome Sale this Saturday, July 30th, St. Andrews in Lincoln, with a number on the screen. Our second one is the Nature Crafts Harvesting Dried Materials for Prairie Wreaths at the Extension Office in Omaha, August 3rd at 7 p.m. And we have an event number on the screen. And the third one is also in Omaha. This is the Greater Omaha Ira Society Sale, the 19th of August, 2 to 8 at St. Andrews. And a reminder that we will be at the fair, and we'll keep you posted on that one. Wayne, you get a question, and it's actually 2 or 3 questions, and it is grasshoppers. Is there anything now that will control grasshoppers that will not wipe out all the beneficial insects? Because most people who ask the question say they want to kill the grasshoppers and nothing else.
If you're looking to knock them down now, you're pretty well stuck with something that's going to affect other insects or other beneficials out there.
Okay.
The adults are fairly susceptible to carbaryl. You can make some brand bait if you want and use that with the carbaryl, or you can spray it on top of where they're feeding. As Jim mentioned in the segment earlier, the best thing to do is get them before they get into your garden areas, or keep that area mowed around it to give them that barrier. I have a pasture on the backside of my backyard, and I know exactly what it's like. They move in, they're thicker by the fence, but as you move towards the house, there's fewer of them. So I don't plant anything at the back end. It's either them or the cows will get it. So, that being said, you're looking at carbaryl. Don't plant on a lot of the contact ones. Those wings do tend to shield them from the contact insecticides, so you want something like carbaryl that'll get them when they ingest it.
All right, thanks, Wayne. All right, a follow-up to your sample. Talk about the edibility of purslane, Matt. Is it edible? And if so, what does it taste like, and when do you pick it?
It's very edible. I think you can actually plant it in your garden and use it in a salad. So I think Lauren tasted this one earlier. It's a little bitter.
The large ones are really bitter. That's the only thing I'm going to say. You want to eat them when they're young.
Yeah.
All right.
Purslane is very edible.
When
And,
it's young.
Yep. When it's young, I guess, is when it's better tasting.
Apparently really low in calories too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Lauren, we
Good
need a
for
new
you.
Good
segment
diet
for
food.
you.
Yeah.
Will Lauren eat it?
I'll eat anything.
All right, Lauren, we have a question about corn smut, and they've
I
never
love
had
to
it.
eat corn smut. It's really good.
They've never had it in their corn before, and
Yeah.
seems to be showing up. What's the deal?
So there's a few things with that. So stormy conditions will favor it. Poor pollination. Actually, the corn smut spore has to grow all the way through that silk. So it grows, and just like a pollen will grow down the silk to fertilize the embryo and produce that individual kernel on a corn cob. That the spore of the smut fungus will do the same thing. So if we have poor pollination, we'll see it, or if we have injury, we'll see it as well. So it is edible, and they do sell it. So, just eat it before it's really dark. You want to eat it silver.
Or don't. All
Yeah.
right, Kelly, we have about 20 seconds, and we have someone who wanted to know about pruning their grapevine now. It's about 20 years old.
well-
Any quick advice on that one?
Well, the time to prune most grapevines, especially if you're growing them for production of grapes, is in March. So now is not the time to prune them.